So we will spend the next hour focusing in on routines and strategies, activities to help you kickstart your K or K1 year and do that in lots of interactive, engaging, fast-paced ways. And I am co-presenting today with my lovely colleague, Jen. So I am Lisa, I'm the program manager and a teacher consultant for POPEY. And Jen is a teacher consultant as well. I'm based in Vancouver, Jen's up in Shuswap. And if you haven't been to our website before, here it is, popey.ca, but hopefully you got our pre-workshop email and got the handouts that are available there, as well as lots of other resources to support K-3 literacy. So we're recording this session and there are captions available in the Zoom toolbar if you would like to use captioning. And I would also encourage you, depending on what device you're using, it may not be showing your name in your Zoom little box where your video is. So you can always click on the 3 dots in the corner of your video and change your name. So if it's like iPhone 2 or iPad 3, you could change it to your name just so that if you're messaging us and entering things in the chat box, we know what to call you. That would be really helpful. Jen just popped the link to the handout in the chat box. So that's the electronic one there. If you did want to grab it and you have a second screen that you're working with today, you can definitely use that. And so we're spending this hour looking at how we can intentionally plan those routines and structures that give our students consistency at the beginning of the year to help them feel safe, feel like they belong and they're included so that they can take risks and be brave and try their very best. And looking at those considerations for how we can plan our environment and our space, the learning activities and those routines to help give our students those opportunities to gain independence. And so the way that we'll do that is a balance of theory, sharing some of the current best practice research on proven strategies. Practice, Jen and I and other people in videos will model and demonstrate activities and strategies in action for you to see what they look like. And then a lot of opportunities for you to actively engage with the ideas and the content, and the strategies and resources that we're sharing and try them on, think about how they might fit for you and how they could work for the students that you're supporting in your classroom or your school community this year. So that when you walk away, you've got at least a handful of things that would be easy for you to try in your classroom or your school, even tomorrow. And we're just going to do a check-in like we do with our kids in the morning. So on this sheet scale, how are you feeling today? So have a look at these cute little guys and you can pick the corresponding number from 1 to 9 and enter your number that best represents how you feel in the chat box. And that'll give Jen and I a chance to scan the mood. And if everyone's feeling like a 4 today, I don't know about you, but the rain definitely impacts my mood. So if we have a lot of 4s, then we know we got our work cut out for us to be as engaging as we can. If anybody's feeling like a 9, I'd like to know what your secret is. Maybe really good copy. And something like this you could do with your kids if you even just search SEL daily check-ins online and do a Google image search. There's tons, lots of cute critters. A nice way to check in with your students very quickly. They could just all hold up their hand, how many fingers for how they're feeling, and gives you a check of sort of what the lay of the land is on any given day or after recess or lunchtime. And going a little bit deeper and a little more seriously, we wanted to do another check-in and ask you to answer one of these 3 questions and to whatever you're comfortable sharing in the chat box. So what are your successes in your teaching practice? So a strength or something that you really love or you're very passionate about. What excites you about the coming school year? Or what's the biggest gift that you can give to your students? So you can put in, if you're answering number 1, you could put 1 in the chat box with your success, and 2 or 3, you can put the question number in so we know. And we'll just give you about 30 seconds there. Ah, yes, a straight grade. Ashley, congratulations. It doesn't always happen that often. And Ray, new books, creativity, connection. Oh, that's lovely. And thank you. Giving the gift of feeling safe and being brave to your students, reading stories to your students, focusing on play and story workshop. Yes, getting back to in-person workshops. Jen, that would be very nice. Connection, welcoming energy, nature walks, a listening ear. So lovely. Yeah. Yeah, it can be a hectic time starting up a new year, as we know. So if we can focus on successes for ourselves and for our students and the gifts that we can share with each other, that's a nice way to keep things focused on the positive and maybe find some peace and connection in amidst all of the flurry of activity. Yeah, getting outdoors is great. Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, thank you for sharing those. So if you're still typing, please keep typing and enter yours so we can see it, but we'll keep moving here. So one of the books that we use, and I used a lot in my classroom when I was still teaching primary and intermediate, is a great one called The First 6 Weeks of School. And it had really, really wonderful routines and strategies and structures that you can put in place to help create that safe, responsive, and caring classroom and that environment for our students. And part of that is acknowledging really how important those social skills are, the core competencies are just as important, if not more important, than the actual curriculum and the content. And so for students, making sure we're meeting those emotional needs for them so that they feel safe, so that they can take risks academically and connect socially with other kids. And for us to pay attention, how our kids learn is just as important as what they're learning. And the research on play and choice showing how important that is for stimulating kids' brains and their bodies and their minds and their spirits, giving them choice as well for them to feel empowered and motivated and engaged. And then looking at how we can support and intentionally structure mindful social interactions, including solving differences, conflict resolution, problem solving, and for students learning how to share their opinion, back it up maybe with some evidence or some reasons or some facts, and navigating how you can have differences of opinion or little conflicts with their peers, which, as we know, comes up quite regularly all the time. It's sort of like half of our job when we're teaching primary. And really building up the routine consistency over and over within each day and every day, the expectations and the guidelines for what's expected, what our norms are, what our processes are for all of those things, like going to lunch, hanging up our coats, getting our planners, all of that stuff. I used to call it boot camp. So knowing our kids is as important as knowing the content that we're teaching. And it's kind of a nice bookend. At the very end of our session, we'll look at some of the research on what has the highest impact on student success from all of the things that we bring to our classroom and to our students, because it might not be what you think it is. And class meetings are a really wonderful way to kick off our days, build community, sharing, bonds, reflecting on how the day went, and also for us to model problem solving strategies, as well as communication and collaboration, and how we negotiate and navigate all of the social interactions our kids have all day, not just with us, but with their peers as well. And then ultimately looking to build up independence, that gradual release of responsibility, how we can structure and support their literacy learning through reading and writing workshop and literacy centers, and setting up those as familiar, safe, reliable routines that give students time and opportunity to make some choices for what they'd like to explore and practice these reading and writing skills and strategies that we're modeling and demonstrating in our reading and writing workshop through our literacy block. So the morning meeting, again, this comes out of this first 6 weeks of school. So here just are some of the benefits for why we might want to do this and include it as part of our routine. It really, a lot of overlap here probably with your calendar routine that you're doing in the morning, but building trust, setting the tone, having students feel welcome, setting up context for the day, what we're going to be learning and focusing on in the day, encouraging that cooperation, inclusion, communication skills. So again, it's really a nice way to have a routine every day that's predictable, but then within that, what we're talking about, what we're sharing, what we're reading, what we're writing, what we're talking about may be different. So it's a really nice balance of predictable but varied. So the format for the morning meeting, 4 parts to it: the greeting. So kids could do a handshake, high five, a clap, elbow bump, fist bump, socially distanced, whatever's safe. Sharing some news of interest, responding to each other, and then a group activity, which could be reading a morning message that you've written ahead of time for them, solving a word puzzle, talking about something connected in the news or what's happening at school, or some themes that we're focusing on, like seasons or fall or Halloween, things like that. And it gives us a chance to announce what's coming for the day, to give them a sense of what's coming. And then that's also dipping into that reading and writing instruction and practice for them as well. So we kind of sort of did a mini greeting at the beginning if you came in early, and we had you enter in the chat box where you're joining us from today and what you're teaching. So that was a way, if you were reading in the comments, to see what other people were writing, and you heard Jen and I commenting and reading out people's entries. We were starting to get a sense of connection. I think we've already all bonded over the rain for the most part, and the joy of having a straight class, not a split class. And we're going to deepen that a little bit more. So if we were together, we'd be on the carpet. It would be nice and cozy. And we'd be talking about this together. Obviously, virtually, it's a little bit different, but the same idea. And September is a perfect time to do this. So what we want you to share in the chat box is a favorite memory or a souvenir from your summer break. So if you traveled around our beautiful province or left our beautiful province, what did you see? What did you experience? What touched your heart? And what's a memory that you're taking with you, maybe to hang on to bring you some peace or a little smile as you get through some of these days that can be hectic and challenging after a couple months of taking it easy. Oh, so Charlene, that's awesome. Getting a rock from every beach that you went to. Hiking in East Sioux Park, lobster in Moncton. Oh, Jen, I'm like, hey, is that Jen? That's Jen. Pickleball, family time, relaxing, second beach, sunsets, camping, backpacking. Oh, Lori got to fly over that Grand Canyon in a helicopter. That might trump all of us. Wow. Oh, the ferry from Rupert to Alberni. Soyuz, Seawall Theater, wonderful. Bridal Falls, lovely. Lots of outdoors, lots of being in nature, quality time with family.
I was just going to say that, lots of time with family. I think we were all so appreciative of that this year.
Yeah, definitely. So if we'd have been together and we were in person like you are with your students, we would have had people turn and talk with an elbow partner and share. So you'd have shared your memory and you would have heard someone else's and then be able to build on that. We can't quite replicate that exactly here, but what I'd encourage you to do is skim through the chat box like I just did reading them out loud and find one other person's memory that you connect to or you have a comment about. And if you can comment on that in the chat box. So I might type in and say, Lori, Souk is just so breathtakingly gorgeous. It's one of my favorite places and I can't wait to go back. Or I might tell Morgan that I camped on Vancouver Island this summer as well. So we'll just take about 1 minute And see if you can connect with someone else virtually and make a comment and a connection to share with other people. Okay, Marta got married. That's pretty Grand Canyon big too.
Yes, congratulations, Marta. That's awesome.
Oh, thanks, Jen, commenting on Tracy's, a seafood boil. Yes. Oh, and Beth's connecting there. Fantastic.
Oh, good connection between Lori and Marta, that their trip over the Grand Canyon was for their 30th anniversary.
So you could see if we were in the same space, especially we had some time in between activities here, I think I'd want to track down a few of you and have some conversations. So with our students, doing this kind of a thing in the morning and getting even just some of our students to share every day about some favorites or things that are special to them, it allows the students to see connections and commonalities that they might not have otherwise realized they had. It's a good way for kids to get to know each other and feel like they're learning about each other. So it can fast track that sense of safety and connection and belonging a little bit, which is so important in September. And then when they go out at recess and lunch, I remember my kids lining up, hey, I went to Disneyland too. I'm going to talk to you about your favorite rides. Let's talk at lunchtime. So it can really spark wonderful connections and conversations. So I would encourage you, give it a try. If you haven't done that favorite memory sharing yet, or bringing in a souvenir, see if you try that with your kids and see how it goes.
Okay, so Lisa was mentioning this fabulous book that we were using a lot to build this presentation for you today, The 6 Weeks of School. And what the authors of the book have recommended is for the first 6 weeks of school to really work on creating a calm, warm place for the students to come to our classroom every day. And really, we know that it is very overwhelming the first couple of weeks. The first 6 weeks of school are very overwhelming. They're overwhelming for our students, and they're also overwhelming for us as teachers. So my hope is that with these basic kind of welcoming aspects that we can focus on for our students, I hope that it takes some of the stress off and alleviate some of that stress when you consider that your job as a primary teacher in the first 6 weeks is really to invite our students in, to build those routines so they feel safe, and to set up those expectations, as Lisa mentioned, kind of a boot camp of like what our students need to know in order to be safe, warm, in a place of warmth and belonging in our classroom community. So helping our students know and care for their classroom is one part of that, and setting up behavior expectations, setting up routines are all part of that. And we're going to take a quick look at some ways that we can help our students set up those great things at the beginning of the year so that the rest of the year can go a little bit more smoothly. So one of the ways that we can do that is through designing spaces and routines, as I mentioned. The importance of setting up routines really quickly is so that we can provide that place of comfort for our students and that place where they know what's going to happen next. So even Lisa mentioned at the beginning of mentioning in the morning meeting that expectation or the routine of this is what our day is going to look like. So students can be free to just take a breath. They know what's coming at them. They know what to expect, and they can focus their mental energy elsewhere. Maybe it's problem solving, maybe it's listening, maybe it's self-regulating, but allowing them to have that space. So when I think about this, I think about the importance of routines with flying on Air Canada. So when we fly on Air Canada, if we're frequent flyers, we know that we need to know where to line up, boarding zones, how to find that, all that stuff. But if you were not a frequent flyer, or perhaps not with Air Canada, because a lot of airlines are different and different routines, especially if you're outside of Canada. It can be very stressful for people to not realize that they have to line up in a correct line, like the zone 1 line or the zone 2 line, where to find their zone number on their boarding pass, how to find their seat, to not stop in the middle of the row and take too much time because there's a long lineup of people behind you that need to get to their seat. What to do with your luggage if it doesn't fit in the overhead compartment, which it almost never does anymore, to put it underneath the seat in front of you, to take off your headphones during the safety demo. All of those things are things that we know as if we're frequent flyers. So that situation, that routine can be a lot more enjoyable for us when we know how to do it, when we know what to do. We can go in as frequent flyers, we can be relaxed, not stressed, enjoy the process rather than have it be a negative thing. So what we want from our students is to be frequent flyers. We want them to be relaxed and not stressed and to enjoy the routine of coming to school. One of the ways that we can set up our students for success is thinking of the importance of setting up our classroom. Now, as seasoned teachers, we probably have, done this for a long time. We have our favorite things, we have our favorite places. As a new teacher, I remember how stressful this was because I didn't know all of the things that were going to be happening in the classroom that I needed to account for, like having a mini lesson area. Maybe it's a rounded table, having some easily accessible areas for our students, having a quiet area. I didn't realize how important that was to make sure that our students had a place to go, that they could regulate themselves if they needed to. Having an area for literacy centers or centers in general, having a classroom library. A classroom library is just so important, and how to even organize that so that it's accessible for our students. So what I would love to hear, any little tips or tricks to set up a classroom, but also, do you have a favorite area in your classroom? And why is it your favorite? And this is just so fun because we never get to see, well, we don't get to see in everyone's classroom to see how they're set up, but to get a sense of favorite areas that really are important to you. So I'm going to start the timer. You have a chance to write into the chat box, 1 minute timer, and then we'll take a look at your favorite areas. Oh, I'm just enjoying reading through your favorite areas. And what's so interesting is so many of you talked about a carpet area in your classroom. And I think, when I think about the community building that happens in a K-1 classroom, the carpet area is just key to having a space where students feel connected to one another, where that's where a lot of the interaction happens in a K-1 classroom. And I just really enjoyed reading about that. So some of the other areas, oh, sorry, Lisa, did you say?
No, I'm just agreeing emphatically.
Yes, good. And then a lot of you talked about a reading area, and I can just picture this cozy area in your classroom where students just want to curl up with a book. And some of you talked about, reading under a tree and alternate lighting, a lot of natural light. So very, very cool. I wish I could see all of your classrooms right now. But we got a good idea of what is important when we're designing our classrooms for our students. Another routine that really helps our students feel that sense of belonging right away is learning students' names very quickly. So I'm going to go over a couple of ideas, and please put your ideas into the chat box if you have some ideas of how to work on students' names quickly as possible. So this is not just, it's a classroom management tip for sure. I learned that very, very quickly as a beginning teacher, but it's also for a sense of belonging. So our students repeatedly feel like they are part of our learning community, that they are part of the classroom, that they are valued for their ideas. So incredibly important. One way, of course, is to have their students' name tags on their desks and on the word wall, just gathering them over, calling them by name. Students start to get to know one another's names by that time, by that action. When they're ready in a K1 classroom, you can have students start to search for their name, maybe not right at this time in K, but later on in the year. They can even copy it onto a whiteboard as they come into the classroom each morning. I worked with a kindergarten teacher that did that as a routine. And another teacher suggested, when I mentioned this a few days ago, that after Christmas she would add in the student's last name from their kindergarten class. And then really focusing on that beginning sound. This is where we can start bringing in that literacy for hearing sounds, noticing sounds, by noticing that Bronwyn starts the same as boots, and focusing on the sound that, or the shape that our mouth makes, or the feeling that our mouth makes when we say that at the beginning of a word like Bronwyn and boots. And of course, we can clap our students' names into syllables and get them ready for syllabification that way. Okay. So by setting up those routines, as I mentioned, there's many, many positive things that are going to happen with our students, with us, with the classroom community. One of the most important, I think, is the decreased anxiety and increased risk taking. Because as we know from being K1 teachers, increased risk taking is so important for our students, because they're entering into a lot of risky areas where they're putting themselves out there. They're learning to read, they're learning to write. There's a lot of risk taking that we need from our students. The more that we can encourage that, welcome that, foster that, the fact that there's not mistakes, the fact that they can, that trying is learning, all of those things are so important for our students. And we want to do that in a way that is really setting our students up for a successful experience. So it's using positive teacher language in ways that we can be proactive with teaching students routines and expectations, rather than being super directive. So what that can look like is, as the children first arrive, sorry, my mouse is giving me trouble, so my chat box is right above where I'm supposed to be reading, but I think it says something like, "Hi, McKenna." What does it say, Lisa? I can't move my chat box right now.
I'm excited to see you today. Let me help you find your table.
Awesome. So setting McKenna up for a successful experience. When she comes in tomorrow, she'll know exactly what to do and where she's to go. When modeling lining up, we can say, I can read this one because my chat box is different. Everyone, watch how I line up safely and respectfully. So setting up those expectations by modeling exactly what we want our students to do, and they can practice doing lining up safely and respectfully right afterwards. As the class walks down the hall, I notice how quietly you are walking in the hallway. That's going to help students in the other classes focus on their work. So not only just reinforcing the positive behavior, but explaining why. So students then know, oh, okay, there's other students working, and that's why we need to walk quietly so we don't bother them. Okay, so a fun book that we love in Poppyland here to work on routines and focus on routines is How to Get Your Teacher Ready. So I'm going to let you sit back and listen to this book, and perhaps think how you could use this book with your students or in your classroom this year. Okay, so what a fun story. If you think of some way to use it with your students, pop that into the chat box. So as K1 teachers, we know that singing and having rhymes or something like that is so important for transitions in our classroom and those routines. We just kind of get used to having things on the go, getting our students ready for different things, lining up or going to the carpet area. And so we're going to give you a chance to share some of those or make some up in the breakout room shortly. So I'll set you up with a couple of great ones to go to. So a hand washing routine, which I'm sure everyone is so used to hand washing routines now after a year of it. So this one goes to row, row, row your boat. Wash, wash, wash your hands, wash them nice and clean. Scrub them here, scrub them there, and scrub them in between. And then putting toys away routine to Farmer Liddell. See, I'm just gonna move my chat box. We're putting our toys away. We hope it won't take all day. To have more fun, we'll get it all done. We're putting our toys away. And I have to say, this is me modeling huge risk taking because I cannot sing at all. So if I can do it, you can do it. So there's your risk taking for the breakout room. Okay, so when we put you in the breakout room, you can either share a transition song that you already know, or we challenge you to come up with one with your breakout group. So here are some ideas of some songs that you might choose, like Jingle Bells, if you're happy and you know it. And then when you come back together into the main room, we would love for one person to share the song in the chat box. You don't even have to sing it out loud to us. You can just write it out. But we would love to have this wonderful collection of all different transition songs that then we can use with our students throughout the year. So that is our big hope for after the breakout room.
All right, looks like people are coming back from their breakout room. And whoever you designated, maybe they got the short straw. You can type in the chat box if you want to let us know the song that you chose to write it to the tune of whatever song, and then even just put a verse of your lyrics if you got just even 4 lines. That would be fantastic. And then before we wrap up at 4:15, we'll show you how you can save the chat box comments so that you'll get all of those if you're looking for inspiration for song ideas. You could also put it to your students. Maybe they can come up with some rhymes to help you with some of those routines.
Oh, that would be fun.
All right, and we are going to keep going, but please continue to share if you did write some lyrics. You can put those into the chat box, and we're going to keep moving on and look at some structures and routines throughout the day, focusing in a little bit more on first a mindful moment that we can take and building in routines to take a pause and a beat when we need to. And then we'll take a deeper dive into looking at some reading and writing workshop routines and structures. So we'll get you to follow along. This is a whole book, Breathe Like a Bear. You might know it, it's quite popular. The book contains 30 mindful moments for kids to feel calm and focused anytime, anywhere. And we have pulled out just 2. So there's a calming activity and then a focused activity. We'll get you just to follow along. And we'll have a mindful moment as we transition to our next part. And it might get us calm and settled to then look at some reading and writing and a form for a workshop. So this format and structure and routine comes out of Teachers College, the Reading and Writing Project at Columbia University, and also some of Gravity Goldberg's work, and also some inspiration from the Daily 5, which I use quite a lot in my primary classroom. So whether it's for reading or writing, the workshop format you can see here, the teacher talk time is very small. So it's a mini lesson that's maybe 7 to 10 minutes maximum. And then the bulk of the workshop time is dedicated time for students to be independently practicing the strategy or skill that you just taught really specifically in that mini lesson. And so independent doesn't mean everybody's working by themselves silently. There's lots possibly of partners, small group work, collaboration going on. As a teacher, you might be conferring with individual students circulating around the room. You might be working with a small group, but it's independent from you in that you're not directing directing or instructing the whole class as one big group. So students can be working on their own, but they might be working in groups or partnerships as well. And the close of the workshop is always to bring everybody back together to a whole group. The carpet's a nice place for that. And to celebrate and reinforce the point of the focus of that day's mini lesson, and having the students share a connection or something that they feel good about. And then also celebrating what we've learned and being able to use it to build on what they can do going forward. That this isn't just a skill or strategy they can use today. It's something they can put in their toolkit and use going forward anytime they're reading or writing. So here's a visual of what it might look like if this was mapping out your room. So you see there, we might have the teacher working with a small group, and then some other kids in 4s or 2s and on their own. And that's them applying or practicing. So the mini lesson format has 4 parts to it. That beginning stretch where you do the mini lesson 7 to 10 minutes, depending on the age of the students, a connection to what they've already learned. So building on what we've taught previously, the teaching, explicitly modeling and demonstrating a strategy, something very specific. So it could be around word work or words with the CVC words or a vowel sound or segmenting or blending. It could be a writing strategy about getting ideas or writing dialogue. Students try it themselves on the carpet, 2 to 3 minutes of here you go. We're going to look at this today. We're talking about strategies writers use and using dialogue. So turn and tell somebody, here's an example of some dialogue in my story. If you were in this situation, what might be something that you or your character would say? What would be some of the dialogue you might hear? Turn and talk and tell someone just a couple of minutes. And then linking it to that being a strategy they can take with them and keep using to build on all the reading and writing strategies you've already taught them that they've learned previously. And then they have that time of that independent time on the carpet. So it's short, it's high impact, and you don't lose them because their attention span isn't too long. So they're high impact, they're definitely short, and the bulk of the time is for the students to have time engaged in practicing and trying it out. So they're trying to apply what you've just taught them, and we're circulating and keeping an eye on them. So in that independent time, just like we would if we had literacy centers or stations, that gradual release of responsibility, we want to go slowly, introduce one thing at a time, invite students initially working in pairs, us being really clear about our expectations. If the students go outside the expectations, we're going to bring everybody back to as a whole group, talk about why we stopped, what needs to be different for things to go successfully and smoothly, and to keep trying it. And that can take a long time. As I was saying, I sort of called that my boot camp. I'd often work on building and having students relearn and learn and practice and follow these expectations for transitions and movements and centers and cleanup and the reading and writing and folders and books. I worked on it through Thanksgiving most years, I feel like, but it was worth the investment because for the rest of the year, really, they were up and running and they were quite independent. But it's a huge investment and it can test everyone's patience, but it's definitely worth it to let them know that some expectations and routines and guidelines for our classroom, some of them are non-negotiable. And like Jen mentioned earlier, the reason for them is to keep people safe, to not waste our time, and to make sure we are productive and we are focused and we are learning and we are setting ourselves up to be as successful as possible and to learn and grow as much as we can in this year together. So we want to think about that gradual release of responsibility for them being independent and in charge of their own learning, as well as that gradual release of responsibility and developing their literacy skills. So one way to do that for them is the literacy centers. It's giving kids that opportunity for choice, practice, engagement, and to work with other kids. That allows us time to circulate, provide some extra support, instruction, or conferencing or interventions, doing some informal assessments with students as needed. If we have concerns or we're needing more information about students and where they're at, this is a wonderful time to do it once the students have been set up to really be authentically engaged in literacy activities because we've set them up to know what the expectations are. They're things we've done together as a whole class, so they're just getting extra practice time there. So getting to know our students, we need to know them really well before we can teach them. Very, very important. And then Jen's gonna bring us home in the last minute or so here. Thanks, Jen.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so just really reinforcing that having those expectations really means that the teacher believes in the learner and that the learner can learn. So that's our job. That's, at the heart of our job. So I'm going to have you answer one question in the chat box, just like you did at the beginning of the workshop today. What's something that resonated with you today? What's something that you really did try in September? Or what do you want your students to know about you? Which is a really great question that I think I perhaps haven't considered in the past. So yes, thank you. So I'll have you pop those into the chat box. As soon as you're also, just because we're only 1 minute away, Lisa's going to launch a poll, right, Lisa? So, okay, awesome. A poll to help us to see what was beneficial about today, something that you took away. So I know that I'm asking you to do kind of two things at once, but just, what you can do would be wonderful. So we have some things coming in about having mindful activities. I love the candle breathing, isn't it great? Oh, lots of people are into the breathe like a bear. Singing in the breakout room. Yay, good for you. Wonderful. Yes, the first story was a great one, wasn't it? Yes, thank you.
And I'll just jump in and mention about saving the chat box. If you do want to save the chat box to have everybody's songs, at the very bottom, right where you were typing in whatever your comments were, and it has your name, over beside your name on the very right, there's a faint box with 3 little dots in it on the very right hand bottom of the chat box. And if you click on the 3 dots, you get an option that says a pop-up that says save chat, and it will just save it to your computer. And it will be kind of an ugly computer font, but you'll have it. Yeah, and it'll be there and you can check out the songs later.
Usually it will go to your download folder, so you know where to find it.
Yeah, depending on if you're Mac or PC, they may behave differently. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm going to end that poll. And there we go.
Okay, here's the sources that we use to build your workshop today. So there's links out or book recommendations if you want to look at those a little bit more. And we'll just love to thank you for being with us today. In the second week of school, we're going to leave you with a wonderful little inspirational video if you have time to stick around. It's only 1.5 minutes, I think. But thanks for being here with us today. And good luck with your school year.